Welcome back to Soup Reviews Gielinor Games Season 4. That's right, me, the host, the producer, the editor of the show. We're going to go back and talk about every episode, everything that happens, and today is episode 3, and oh boy, this is a banger episode. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We are so close to hitting our goal of 1 million subscribers, and of course, anything you want to know or comment about, I read through every single comment in the comment section, so feel free to leave anything you have to say down below. Your feedback so far has been genuinely amazing. In fact, I've started the planning for Gielinor Games Season 5, and a lot of the stuff you guys have commented on is helping kind of shape the format, helping me shape some of the challenges and bannings to make them more digestible for the viewers, right? So you guys have been awesome so far, so thank you very, very much. I do have some info for you guys on Gielinor Games Season 5, the next season. I'll talk about that at the end of this video, but again, this is all about Season 4, so let's go back to Season 4, Episode 3, and this was the money-making challenge. In the last episode, we lost Skill Specs, a fan, a player favorite, just a favorite in general, so it honestly was really sad coming into this week because everybody loves having Skill Specs around, so to see him leave so early was truly devastating, but that's just kind of the nature of the game, right? So we're coming into today with 16 players, and you guys know what 16 players means, right? Usually, if there's an even number of players, we're looking at a team challenge of some sort. As you guys know, the season is a free agents format, so we do kind of different challenges throughout with teams, with duos, with teams of 3, teams of 4, teams of 5, solos, right? But usually the players all know at this point where if it's an odd number of players, most likely it's a solo challenge. If it's an even number of players, we're looking most likely at a team challenge. And that's exactly what the case was today. Before we get into the challenge though, I kind of want to talk about what I thought the political, social landscape was at this point. This is something I always find very interesting. Now, usually in seasons 2 and 3, right, we had the public voting where at this point in the game, a lot of people are kind of like, okay, let's rock with each other for the rest season. Let's find people to rock with us for the rest of the season, come up with an alliance where we don't vote for each other, right? And we don't have to worry about, hopefully, no backstabbing happening and we can make it to a final together or something like that, right? In this season, definitely not the case because it's way more performance focused, and the twist of being able to choose who you want to go against in the banning kind of changed everything. It flipped everything on its head. Instead of people teaming up and saying, hey, I won't vote for you in the public vote, it's now, hey, if you're in the tribunal, please don't pick me, or if you're in the banning, please don't pick me to go against you, right? It's a lot of kind of like handshake deals where, hey, I won't pick you if you won't pick me. The thing is, with this twist of the tribunal being different every single week, and then also you never really know the mindset of the person in the banning and who they're going to pick, it was a lot less certain every single week who was going to go in. But what a lot of players thought was most people in this season are going to pick somebody who they think they can beat. And that's honestly the smartest play, right? If you're in an elimination, you want to pick somebody who you think you have the best chance of beating. Now, obviously, there are a couple people, Bodhi specifically, who kind of changed that meta later on, but up to this point, that's what most people were thinking. In episode 1, Victim picked Z Cookies, he thought he could beat her, he did. In episode 2, West Ham picked Skill Specs, he thought he could beat him, he did. Now, it's kind of funny going back to episode 2, West Ham thought that the banning was going to be some kind of game knowledge challenge, so he's like, you know what, let me pick somebody who's on the same playing field as I am. He thought Skill Specs, but it ended up being a PKing challenge. So he picked another PKer, which wasn't good for him, but West Ham was just so good at PKing that it was just kind of over at that point, unfortunately, for Skill Specs. But at this point, yeah, you're picking somebody who you think you can beat. The twist of being able to choose who you want to go against in the banning, I think turned off a lot of people from wanting to play a really big social game this time around. There was still a lot of DMing and talking behind the scenes, no doubt, but none of this kind of big alliance forming like we saw in previous seasons. And I think it's mainly because this season was so heavily performance and challenge based, and you just, again, never knew what the person who gets sent into the banning was going to think. So maybe your relationships, maybe a lot of people thought that those relationships wouldn't save them, even though I think for some people they did. Somebody like C Engineer, who was talking to a bunch of people throughout the season, could have been chosen multiple times, but he didn't because, well, I think he was just friends with everybody, and it led him to get to the final, right? So that worked out for him. But we also, of course, had the Farmers Alliance. Now, the Farmers Alliance was interesting this season because I definitely painted the picture as the editor of there being this hardcore Farmers Alliance. And one, I did it because, well, I think it's important that the viewers know who the farmers are and that there's a chance that they work together and have each other's back, which honestly they definitely did, even though some of them were saying that they weren't working together and that there was, no talking between them and that, they're playing for themselves. And I think somebody like Faux definitely did, right? He definitely did not really care if a farmer gets sent in, especially if it's somebody who he was scared of beating him in a final, somebody like Roydy or Mammal. But I think they had each other's back to some extent. It is, of course, only episode 3, though, so things could change in the future in terms of alliances and people figuring out kind of the best way to play this format. But at this point, again, I think everybody was still just like, what do we do with this new twist of, we have the Amulet of Sabotage in there, the Amulet of Choice, we have this picking who you want to go against in the banning, we have the Tribunal, right? So it's really a big new format, and I think a lot of people were still trying to get used to it. The challenge today was called Show Me the Money, and it was a money-making challenge. Now, money-making has been a staple since Season 1. It's one of my favorite challenges to do. It's one of the viewers' favorites to do. Everybody loves money making on RuneScape. It's why I have multiple series on my channel of making money. Everybody just loves it. And it's a very easy challenge to implement into Gielinor games. And it's very understandable, very digestible for the viewers. They see that the team that makes the most money in game wins. It really is that simple. Now, the thing about it is that since we've done it since Season 1, we've done it a lot, and we have to change it up every single time, right? There's constantly new rules being added to change it up from how we've done it in a previous season. If somebody finds a broken method, right, we have to change it and fix it and redo it. So that's why every single time a new money-making challenge happens in a season, it's why it's different and why there's new rules being added, because we have to keep changing it season to season. I mean, it was very simple in Season 1, right? Whoever makes the most money wins. In Season 2, we had the duos with a couple of new rules. In Season 3, we had a bunch of new rules. I think it was duos again. But this time in Season 4, we have our first big team versus big team money-making challenge since Season 1. Now, what made me really excited for this challenge was I was thinking before creating this, I'm like, oh my god, there's so many new rules that need to be added this time around, because last season we had, the Victim and Will were looting neck reels, and while that worked in the last season, I knew that it was a little bit controversial and people just thought it shouldn't be a thing, so I decided this time around no looting other players' drops off the ground. So that was another rule that needed to be added, and I was thinking, how do I make a money-making challenge that isn't going to have 12 rules that the viewers need to follow, and and have this convoluted money-making challenge that maybe is not as exciting as previous ones. But then I just thought, wait, hold on, let's just make every single person do a different method, right? Instead of 8 people on a team doing the same method and making the most money, what about everybody needs to do a different method? And I think that was the best way to go about doing this challenge, and I think it turned out really, really great. It's a very, very simple little change, right? We can now open up the entire game again. There's no more there's a couple of things we had to exclude, but for the most part, most methods are open again, right? Usually we would ban Chinchampas. This time Chinchampas are open. We would have to ban Gauntlet. This time Gauntlet's open. We'd have to ban Zalcano. This time Zalcano's open, right? All these things that we had to ban previously are now open again. And it's simply because everybody has to do a unique method. The main reason I ban methods is, one, because sometimes they just aren't entertaining. Like, imagine I let everybody do the same method for this challenge, and Team A decides to all hunt red Chinchampas, and we have, all we have is everybody hunting chins, and it's B-roll of them hunting chins. It's very, very boring. But if I force them all to do a unique method, everybody's traveling all around the game, doing different methods, making different amounts of money. It's really entertaining for the viewers. It's really entertaining, I think, for me to edit. It's challenging for the teams to kind of find out who should do what method to make the most money. I think it was really the best way to go about doing it, and I think it turned out really, really great. In order to kickstart some of the methods, I let everybody start with a Ring of Wealth like I usually do, which lets them teleport to the Grand Exchange. And then I think they also started with 100k GP each. 100k was, again, just to kind of stop the first 5 to 10 minutes of each player's money-making method just being them trying to get starter cash. Sometimes some methods are a lot better and turn out more exciting if you just give them maybe like 100k for a starter setup. So something like people have a starter setup for Revs, or people have a starter setup for something like Zalcano. So just that 100k bypasses the boring part of money making where they have to get, money to actually do what they want to do. This just gives them the money already that they need. So that was, I think for me, also a nice little addition. Now there was one ban, and that was looting other players' grounds off the drop. Looting other players' drops off the ground. And that was just because it happened in Season 3, and I didn't want to happen again in Season 4. So that was the only ban this time around. Now, one other thing I decided to add was each team got to ban one money-making method. And it was kind of funny because I was thinking that maybe one team would ban a really popular method because they didn't have players who were strong enough to do it, but the other team did. But honestly, both teams have such strong players that can do most of the content in the game that I think Team A decided to ban Black Salamanders, which was more of just a funny meme choice, I think, and as opposed to them saying, oh, this is a really good money-making method that nobody wants to do. Again, I think Bodhi even has a confessional saying, listen, our entire team is confident and strong at every method in the game, so any ban that we have isn't really going to make a difference. I think Team B banned Vorkath, so Vorkath was more of a serious ban. It was more just maybe nobody wanted to do Vorkath, and they're like, if somebody else on the other team does, then we're just going to ban it. It was, Vorkath can be good money, so it was a solid ban, I think, but the bans at the end of the day didn't really make a big difference. I kind of just threw it in there as a potential little twist, but I don't think it had the biggest difference in the end. Now, going into this, we also had a Sabotage. In episode 2, West Ham chose the Sabotage option from the Amulet of Choice, and coming into today, he got to choose the Sabotage, and he chose to Sabotage Settled. Now, this is interesting because this is where the Amulet of Sabotage, or Amulet of Choice, gets really interesting with the Sabotage option, because he chose Settled simply because Settled said his name, because Settled was in the Tribunal in the previous week. And this is a trend that happens throughout the season. And it's interesting, where if somebody gets sent in by a certain group in the Tribunal, and last week it was Bodhi, last week it was Roydy, Eviescape, and Settled. Settled, I think, was the first person to speak saying West Ham's name, that, my vote's for him. West Ham remembered that and said, you know what, Settled, you chose me last week, right? So I'm going to pick you and have the Sabotage against you. So I think a lot of people, when they heard that, Settled, I think also told me in private, or maybe even a confessional, I don't 100% remember, that, he doesn't want to speak first anymore in the tribunals, because people remember that. People will remember. I would be the same way. If I got sent in by a tribunal, I would definitely remember the player who maybe spoke first or spoke the most aggressively or something like that, right? So West Ham remembered it and put the Sabotage on Settled, and I believe Settled Sabotage was he loses his 100k starting cash, and he gets 100k subtracted from his final GP total. So to me, going into this episode, I'm like, damn, that stinks. He has to lose an entire starting cash, and if he doesn't make great money, he loses 100k on top of that. So me thinking, oh my gosh, that's going to be strong. It kind of sabotages his team a little bit, simply because they all have to give him a little cash to start off with, so they're all losing a little bit of their own starting cash. And now he has this pressure where he has to perform and make the money back in order to make up for that, and essentially a 200k GP loss, since he loses 100k at the end and he doesn't have 100k to start with. So it's, to me, again, it's one of those cases where I thought the Sabotage was really strong going into it. Obviously, it didn't really make a difference simply because of how much money he made, but that's just kind of my thought process going into it. The next thing I want to talk about is the formation of the teams. Now, usually in previous seasons, I would be the person creating the teams, and I would usually whenever I create teams, I try to put people together who have chemistry, right? Simply because at the end of the day, this is a show about entertainment, and I want to put players together who are going to create entertaining moments. I don't want to necessarily put players together who maybe don't know each other and there's not going to be much talking going on in the call, right? It's just better having people together who know each other and create funny moments. It's happened many, many times. Just Settled in Jimmy last year, right? Or Settled in Jimmy in season 3, looting players drops at Vires, right? Eviescape and Solo Mission doing the money-making challenge and being beasts last year. So that's just my kind of preference to doing it. However, there's always the comments of being like, oh, Soup is rigging this challenge to put these two people together, right? Because they're going to get first and he wants to keep them in, right? Now, at the end of the day, let me just say this. Every time I see a comment saying, oh, this challenge or this elimination was changed or rigged because Soup wants these people to stay in, that to me just kind of shows that Gielinor Games has made it as kind of like a popular show, simply because if you have people, leaving comments like that, if you guys watch any kind of reality show, competitive reality show, I watch a show called The Challenge, that happens all the time. The producers change something to keep certain players in, right? Now, in Gielinor Games' case, 100%, there's nothing ever going into the season where I will manipulate or change it just to keep people in, but seeing comments like that, I'm just like, yeah, like nice, like the show's made it 100%. So going into the season, I decided to change it up just so those comments wouldn't happen anymore, and it was the twist of whoever won the previous week's elimination would get to choose teams if there was a team challenge in the next week. And that's a really easy way to put all the heat off myself, all the heat off production, and just say, you know what, we're going to put it into the players' hands. And a lot of shows I've watched have done this, where they let the players choose the team. So for me, I'm just like, you know what, West Ham, you won the previous elimination, so you get some power here, man. You get to put the two teams together. And man, when I announced this in the call, everybody was like, wait, that's so unfair. Like, that's not fair at all, because West Ham was obviously, he had the chance now to put together a powerhouse team. He can put together, if he's watched previous seasons, he can now choose who are some of the best money-making players in the game to have on his team. So I think he spends 3 to 4 minutes putting a team together, and his team ends up being Bodhi, Sea Engineer, Dino, Faux, Eviescape, Hoodie, Solo Mission, and himself. Now, this team was funny because this was more of a team of his friends and people he gets along with, as opposed to arguably the best money-making team. I love my boy Sea Engineer. He's one of my favorite people in the world. But when it comes to money-making challenges on Gielinor games, he just can never find his footing and make a ton of money. So having West Ham choose him for the A team, right, I found that to be really funny. But Singer's entertainment, right? So it's good to have him either way. Now, he does still have some really good players on his team. I mean, Faux, Eviescape, Solo Mission, and Bodhi all have proven track records of making good money on Gielinor games. Hoodie is a very experienced player, even though it's his first season, so it wasn't a bad pick either. Dino, maybe not much experience with the money-making challenge, but Dino and West Ham are good friends, right? They're always going to kind of roll and ride together, so not surprised to see him pick him. But that means that the other team is now a really strong mix of players. We have Framed, who is maybe the greatest moneymaker of all time in Gielinor games. That guy has a proven track record of being a beast. He won the Season 2 money-making challenge in Season 1, or Season 2 money-making challenge in Season 1. He made a ton of money. I mean, he uploads multiple money-making from scratch challenges on his channel every single year. Settled has had a beast of a season so far. Torvesta knows his way around making money. Roydy, Zoe, MMORPG, Victim, all of them know their way around making money. At the end of the day, let's just get it straight. Like, it's hard to make an overpowered team simply because there are so many good players on the season, right? I mean, to me, it's impossible to have an 8-player team where it's just 8 strong players and the other other team is weak. It's just not. Just like I said, everybody's just so good on the season that no matter how you maybe mix the teams, it's going to be a strong team either way. And that's exactly what the case was here. So we have Team A and Team B, and who are now going to go at it in a money-making challenge. The first thing I want to talk about is the editing of this episode. Now, going into it, I realized, I have 16 players in this episode. Everybody, for the most part, is doing a unique method. There's 2 different teams. And at first, I was editing it and having it jump back and forth between players on different teams, all within kind of the first 15 minutes, or 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I just found it to be a bit too jarring. I think a lot of players and viewers would forget who's on, what team. So if I'm just hopping back and forth between the different teams, it might be a little bit confusing to people. So I just thought to myself, what if I just literally show a graphic on stream saying B team, and then just show all the progress that B team has made up until that point. And then when all that progress is done being shown, I have a graphic showing A team, and then I show all the A team graphic. That way, and then I show, all the A-team footage and all the progress they made. And I think that worked out really well. Hopefully you guys agree with me. But that way everybody just knows that, okay, when I see the B-team graphic, all the footage from now is going to be B-team. And then when I show the A-team graphic, all the footage is going to be A-team. And I think that was a good way of showcasing and keeping it simple which player was on which team and how much money they were making. Right off the bat, when it comes to a money-making challenge on Gielinor games, the safest thing you can do is have a consistent money-making method. And that's why things like Black Chinchompas are so good, because no matter what, you are consistently making money. You're kind of always going to have that flow of money coming in every time you catch a Black Chin. The riskier methods are the ones where you're relying on a big drop from a boss to, make your money. Something like Barrows, where, yes, Barrows is consistent money, and you are going to pull a drop here and there that will bump up your average. But for a money-making challenge on Gielinor games, it's happened before. If you get unlucky at Barrows, you're making 150K, right? And that, in comparison to a lot of other methods, is very, very small. So it's just one of those things of you have to kind of risk the balance. You have to kind of balance the risk versus reward for a money-making challenge. And that's why in this episode, you see most people doing a consistent money-making method. People like, Roydie and Eviescape doing Gauntlet, Victim and Bodhi were doing Chinchampas, Framed and Dino were doing Revenants, Mr. Mammal was doing Volcano, Solo Mission was doing Runite, or, again, just a very easy way to make consistent money, which is very important, especially in a team challenge. Now, speaking of a team challenge, I didn't mention this earlier, but team challenges are so funny on this type of format because, well, it's not funny, I should say. It's actually scary for the players on a team format because here's the thing. If you are on the winning team, you are all completely safe, and that's awesome, right? But if you're on the losing team in a big team versus big team challenge, all of a sudden, in this case, 8 players are now safe from elimination. 8. That's half the players in the game are now safe, and that cuts down the amount of people who can now be up for elimination by a lot. So it becomes very, very scary for the people on the losing team. It's the same thing with like Castle Wars last year, where all of a sudden 9 players are now safe and 9 players are now up for elimination. It's a very, very scary feeling to have the amount of people up for elimination go from 16 to now 8, right? So a lot of players in this challenge were like, oh my God, we really have to win this. It'd be great to be safe, and I really don't want to be part of that losing team. So that was another thing that I think most of the players were thinking about during this challenge. Let's talk about some of the highlights of the money-making challenge. The biggest one is, of course, how much money Settled was making. And he decided to follow a Soup Unusual Moneymaker. Now, let me just say that the Soup Unusual Moneymakers absolutely carried the season when it comes to moneymakers. Everybody was following the Soup Guide, and let me tell you, that made me very, very happy. So Settled decides to pay homage to the Ultimate Iron Man community and decides to go buy items from Arnold's shop in the Piscators fishing colony. And this is a method I had covered not too long ago in an unusual money-making method. He explains it in the episode, but pretty much Ultimate Iron Man will sell their items to this shop and then you can buy them for cheap. And these items can range from things like gems to raw food. And the fact that they're in this shop and really cheap to buy means you can buy them in bulk and you can sell them to the Grand Exchange. And that's exactly what Settled does here. The thing about this method is it's still risky, right? Because if he starts hopping around in these worlds trying to find an item to buy and he never finds any, he all of a sudden makes 0 GP, or he makes very little GP. And he has this Sabotage, so he loses the 100k at the start, and he has the 100k's penalty at the very end. So if he doesn't find anything to buy, it's he loses pretty much, right? And it's absolutely brutal. The other thing I haven't mentioned is this year they only have 30 minutes to make money. Usually money-making challenges on Gielinor Games, they have an entire hour. But that's changing simply because, one, an hour is just a little bit too long in terms of filming time for me. I've told you guys how I try to cut down the filming sessions to at least be under 2 hours. And if I have an entire challenge taking up an entire hour of the filming session, it's just too long. So I just changed it to 30 minutes. So he only has 30 minutes now to find an item, which is even less time. So it's a bit of a risky thing, in my opinion, to do, but it works out for him, as you guys know. Now, the other big thing this episode was, one, Team B just outperformed Team A in this challenge. They just had better methods and performed better. Eviescape unfortunately dies in the gauntlet, right, which loses him a decent amount of money on a run. Roydie has an absolute flawless 4 gauntlet runs, I believe, corrupted gauntlet runs, right? So to be able to knock out 4 of them in 30 minutes is just unreal. Huge shout out to him for that. But the big one, of course, is we have the Faux throw, the Faux beach moment, which is one of my favorite moments on the season. And we have Faux deciding to be a little bit sneaky this challenge. Now, Faux realizes that his team has some really strong players. We've got Bodhi in there. We've got their entire team is strong, right? Again, everybody on the season is strong, but some really heavy known hitters like Solo Mission, Bodhi are on his team. And he's thinking to himself, hold on. Do I want my team to win this challenge if we lose and those people could potentially go home and it's people he wouldn't have to face later on in the season or potentially a final? So he makes the decision to underperform in this challenge because he wants his team to lose. Now, right off the bat, let me just say this about people throwing in a challenge. I think it's okay if it happens a couple times throughout the season. It leads to a funny moment. I think in this case, a lot of people liked what he did because he was entertaining. There's always going to be people who hate, people who don't try, but this was a strategic move. Faux didn't quit this because he didn't feel like playing that day or he didn't feel like making money. He did this because strategically it actually kind of makes sense. And what I absolutely loved about what Faux did here is that he did it while still telling his team he was trying, which I find that to be absolutely amazing. And nobody on his team even at the end when they announced the results and how much money everybody made, nobody even considered the fact that he might have thrown. And it was hilarious because when this episode went live on Twitch, we had people on his team being like, what the hell? Like, I had no idea Faux did that. I think Soul Mission tweeted out or posted in the comments about it, being like, Faux, like, what did you do this? It was so funny. And he goes about it really smart. Now, what Faux does is he does an absolute classic moneymaker in the Gielinor Games Challenge at the start, and that's buying nails. It's one of the best way to raise your cash stack at the start. You instantly buy out nails at the sawmill, sell them, and boom, you're up like 100K right off the bat. So Faux does this. He makes some really good money at the start, and 5 minutes in, he tells his team, hey guys, I've already made 250K. So everybody's already thinking, damn, this Faux guy's amazing. He's doing so well. And psychologically, or I don't even know if that's the right word to use, but he's low-key kind of like manipulating his team into thinking, oh, Faux is doing really well. Let's like big shout out to Faux, right? So he has this really, really strong start, right? And then he decides that from here on out, he's just going to kind of make just a little bit of money, right? He had a really strong start, and now he's just going to do things that only make him a little bit of money. He decides to switch up where he buys his nails. Now, there is a nail shop or a general supply store in Piscarilius that sells bronze and iron nails. But here's the tricky thing about this store is if you buy the nails and then sell them, you actually lose money. And he had been telling his team that he had been making money buying the nails. Now he's switching location, buying nails at a different place, but this time he's losing money buying the nails, which is absolutely hilarious. So I don't remember actually in the episode if this was said, but I think Faux at one point does tell his team like, oh, I actually ended up losing money on those nails, even though I thought it was profiting. The margins were a bit crazy and whack. And I think either the team just brushed it off or they're like, oh, it's okay, man, just like keep going at it. So, but he knew what he was doing here, right? So he was buying the nails. So this entire time while his team's going hard trying to make money, he's kind of just chilling, right? Doing his own thing, making, not going hard. And of course, I have the music montage with the Muse song, Supermassive Black Hole, which was one of my favorite songs. I played it. It was I heard about it on FIFA back in the day, but I know a lot of people hear it as the Twilight baseball song. But to have that song in there was great with everybody, the montage, everybody making money. And then, of course, we had the Faux beach scene where Faux kind of just chilling, drinking a margarita or whatever he's drinking, right? Not really doing his best, which I think was just absolutely hilarious. Shout out to Allie. As you guys know, Allie, who was one of the assistant producers on the season and helped with some of the editing. She actually edited that scene of Faux and drinking with the sunglasses on. So big shout out to Allie for that one. It was great. It's actually an emote on Faux stream now, which I absolutely love. So Faux ends up throwing this challenge. He does a little bit of something different at the end with mining gems to make a little bit of money. But listen, Faux probably could have made $1 million+ GP in this challenge. But again, he decided not to. So the final results could have been a lot closer. But Faux was like, no, I don't want them to be close, right? So he ends up just kind of chilling towards the end. Now, getting into it for the rest of the challenge, everybody kind of just, we have some funny moments like Travesta dying to a PK or stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think throughout the episode, I think 15 minutes in, Team B had quite a large lead over Team A, and from there on out, it was kind of just a stomp, right? Everybody's just consistently doing well on Team B, and it leads to Team B winning the challenge. At the end, I think, let me find the results here. Yeah, we have an absolute stomp. 6.5 million GP earned by Team B and 4.1 million GP earned by Team A. Dino made the most on the other team with 992K. Settled made a whopping 1.7 million GP off that Piscatoris general store method, which is amazing. So the Sabotage ends up really meaning nothing simply because of how well he did, even with the minus 100K. But as you can see, if you compare the amounts of GP everybody made, it was just a stomp across the board, right? So a big shout out to Team B for their huge performance. Travesta has a really cool PK at the end where he PKs somebody for an extra like 200K. It would have been cool if that made the difference, but again, it was just a wash. So this is interesting, right? Because we have West Ham, who chose the teams. He had the chance to put together a powerhouse team, and his team ends up losing. Faux's little plan of making the most of throwing to have his team, lose ends up making a big difference. And now these 8 players on the right here are up for elimination. Dino, Bodhi, Solo, Hoodie, West Ham, Eevescape, Sea Engineer, and Faux. In order to choose a player, though, Team B has to come up with a tribunal. As you guys know, only 3 players in the tribunal every single episode, and B team decides to really just keep it simple and say, hey, the top 3 players who made the most money are in the tribunal. Those 3 ended up being Settled, Mr. Mammal, and Roydy. So we have 3 tribunals in a row for Settled, we have 2 tribunals in a row for Roydy, and we have Mr. Mammal joining his first tribunal of the season. Shout out to Mr. Mammal for a very strong money-making performance. He made $925K, which was the third most in the entire challenge. So shout out to Mr. Mammal. So that tribunal is interesting. We got 2 farmers in there, and we have Settled. And they now have to make a decision on who they want to send into the banning. So the tribunal call is, as usual, very interesting. I love the tribunal calls. They decide to send in a PKer. Now, this is where the PK hates, right, in this season. It's already been going on a little bit, but this is where everybody's like, we have to get the PKers out. We have to get the PKers out, especially because everybody saw how much West Ham stomped in the last episode in a PK challenge, and they're like, oh my god, we have to get out these PKers. So instead of targeting West Ham this time, though, they decided to just change it up and target the other big PKer in the group, which is Dino. So we have 3 votes onto Dino to make it to go into the banning, and Dino now is in the episode 3 banning. So this is always very exciting because I love the decision that needs to be made here of who he wants to go against. Now, man, I tell you what, I did not envy Dino in this situation. He has to choose between Bodhi, Solo Mission, West Ham, Hoodie, Eviescape, Sea Engineer, and Faux. Now, this is very interesting because he's probably never going to pick Dino. He's probably never going to pick West Ham, which is one of his better friends. He probably is never going to pick Bodhi or Solo Mission because he's not confident to go against them. Now, what's interesting is I could see a world where Dino picks Faux, but I really think Faux was just better at almost all aspects of the game, aside from PKing, than Dino. So again, it's not somebody who he wants to go against. Sea Engineer is a good friend of Dino, and I think it's also another case of he just doesn't want to pick his friend. I mean, like I said earlier, Sea Engineer was friends with pretty much everybody this season, so nobody really wants to pick Sea Engineer to go against him. So that just leaves one person, and that's Hoodie. I think Hoodie was the only person who he thought maybe he could beat in other aspects of the game, even though Hoodie is a very experienced player himself. So again, there really just was not an easy choice for Dino to make here. Another reason why these big team versus big team challenges are so detrimental to the losing team, because the amount of players they can choose to go against is now in half and makes it a lot harder. So he decides to pick Hoodie. So this made me sad because we have another rookie banning here, so we're losing another rookie no matter what. And I like seeing the rookies go far, but in this case, we have another rookie versus rookie banning, Dino versus Hoodie. But sometimes it's exciting because we can kind of see the new players put their skills up to the test, and it gives the viewers a better idea of who they are. So Dino versus Hoodie. Now, when I announced that this banning was going to be the escape room, I mean, everybody was just like, oh my god, this sounds like the coolest banning ever. And going into it, oh man, I was so excited because this banning was so exciting. I've been wanting to do an escape room for so long. Everybody's been requesting it in the comments. So when the creator of the escape rooms glitch reached out to me and said that he was, he had a really exciting idea for a potential Gielinor Games escape room from an elimination, I was thinking, oh my god, this is going to be amazing. Hoodie thought the same thing. Hoodie was very excited to go in this elimination, but you know who wasn't excited to go into this elimination? Dino. Dino was not happy. And again, this is one of those instances of sometimes the eliminations are in your favor and sometimes they are not. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't immediately think that this was going to be a Hoodie wipe. I mean, this is an escape room. You never know in an escape room what's going to click, what's going to click for what person. There could be a world where Dino figures out the first hint first, or Hoodie figures out the first hint first, and it's kind of a chain reaction from there. So I didn't think right away that Hoodie was going to win or Dino was going to win. I was just hoping we were going to see an exciting banning. That's just what I was hoping for. The glitch escape room was pretty simple. You have both players starting in Falador Park, and they have to find a way to get out of Falador Park without dying, without leaving any of the entrances into the park. Easy, right? Well, kind of. I mean, a lot of people I think knew, and maybe Hoodie did. I'm not sure if Dino did, but a lot of the players watching when we were in the Discord call knew right away that they had to dig down into the giant mole lair and leave via the rope at the end. Now, that's easy, right? Get a spade, dig down, leave via the rope. But the thing is, their entire inventory is filled with hints on how to do it, but they don't know how to do it. The biggest thing is you need a spade to get down into the giant mole lair, and they have to figure out how to get a spade. Is it hidden somewhere? Is it in a crate? Is it in the tool leprechaun, which it ended up being, right? And they have to kind of figure their way out of it. It's just a classic escape room, right? Well, there was one more twist that happened at the start, and that's that both of the players logged into poisoned accounts, and they only had 10 HP. So not only are they racing to try to beat each other to get out of this escape room, both of them are poisoned and are dying, right? A lot of people commented, why are they poisoned? That was way too much. Now, I'll give you my reasoning why. First of all, if the players being poisoned is a great talking point. It's a great exhilarating moment when both of them realize that they're poisoned, and all of a sudden they're trying to get out and they're poisoned. There's so much going on and it's completely hectic. It's great for the viewers. It's, at least for me, just because it's chaos, and chaos is good. Chaos is entertaining on a show like Gielinor Games. So when the creator of the escape room glitch reached out to me and said, hey, you're going to log into a poisoned account, I was thinking to myself, is that maybe too much? I mean, the chances of them doing this escape room while poisoned are so low. Like, the chances of anybody finishing this escape room while being poisoned are low. However, it's an exciting moment. Like, why not include it, right? If I don't even have this poison happening at all, then it's a moment I'm missing out on to make the episode even more exciting. And if somebody actually manages to escape an escape room while being poisoned, that is crazy, right? It was more just, if it happens, then it's an unreal moment, goes down as one of the best moments in Gielinor Games history. And if it doesn't, oh well, right? It's okay. We showcased it, that it was a possibility, and the viewers have an exciting little moment of seeing the poison and then seeing both the players die, right? So it was more, I kept the poison because if somebody does manage to do it, it leads to an absolutely insane moment. And I don't get that moment if they don't even start off poisoned at all. So I decided to keep it in. And yeah, at the end of the day, both players died to poison because, well, they couldn't figure it out. A lot of people were asking me, how do you even go about solving this escape room while being poisoned? Now, poison works where if you have a menu open, it stalls the poison tick, right? So what you technically could do is, as soon as you see you're poisoned, you open up something like a skill menu in game, and then you have to try to figure out the entire escape room with this menu open. And once you figure it out, you close the menu and start rushing to do all the steps. And by the time you finish the escape room, hopefully you've escaped without the poison killing you. That's pretty much the way to go about doing it. But again, the chances of that happening are very low, especially in the heat of a moment. A Gielinor Games elimination, so much is on the line. For somebody to be able to pull something like that out that quickly is very, very low. But again, it was all about the potential. I keep saying that word, but if it happens, it's an absolutely, like, imagine somebody had actually done that, right? The chat, the comments would be like, oh my God, this guy is the best player ever. Absolutely insane, right? So if that had happened, there's a world where I'm sitting here saying, yeah, it actually happened and it led to one of the best moments in Gielinor Games history. In this case, it didn't, right? But again, it could have potentially happened. I know you guys are probably sick of hearing that word, potential. So it doesn't happen. Both of them die and they now have to reset, right? I always just thought to myself, if both of them die, they just reset and start again. Some of the items had to be taken out because of the deaths, but it is what it is. Now, at the end of the day, Hoodie figures out all the steps before Dino does. He figures out the bank pin to get into the tool leprechaun to get the spade. He realizes that you can use barbarian fire making to make the fire, and with the fletching and all that. So again, it's a really, really, really interesting escape room. What made it really funny was Dino just could not figure it out. He figured out a couple of things, right? That you can, chop a tree to make a bow, right? But from then, he just couldn't figure it out. He was killing farmers for gardeners or whatever they were called to try to get a drop, even though they don't drop anything, right? So this entire time that Hoodie is figuring out these steps, Dino's just like, maybe ducks drop something, maybe gardeners drop something if I arrow them, right? So it just wasn't Dino's skill set. I felt so bad for him because I know Dino is genuinely entertaining. He's very good at the game. He just wasn't able to showcase that really much this season, simply because he never had the opportunity to. There weren't any PK challenges, and he had to go into an elimination that did not at all fit his skill set. And an escape room is a really tough way to, again, Hoodie just understood the mechanics of the game better and realized that you need this to do it at a certain level, and realized that the items in his inventory were what he needed to figure out the rest of the escape room. So if you guys, if you're watching this, you've definitely watched it, but Dino had some funny B-roll of just attacking gardeners, and then the rest of the B-roll was Hoodie figuring out the escape room. This escape room is one of those bannings where you could say if two other players had actually been a part of it, imagine it was like Bodhi versus Solo Mission or Faux versus Settled, or people who have done escape rooms before and would have understood what's going on. It definitely would have led to, you could argue, a more exciting elimination. But at the end of the day, again, this is going back to, Soup saved certain bannings for certain weeks. I could have saved this banning if I had known that maybe 2 really, really strong escape room players were going in and then give them this escape room. But I had scheduled the escape room to be the episode 3 elimination, so that was going to be the episode 3 elimination, and it definitely led to a bit of a lopsided challenge, and maybe didn't paint the escape room in the best light because of it, but I still found it to be very, very entertaining. I still think it turned out great. Let me know what you guys think of the escape room. I definitely could see it coming back. I think there's so many possibilities for more escape rooms throughout the game. Now, whether it should come back as a challenge, should it come back as an elimination, right? I think it could work if we do it as a challenge where, let's say there's 12 people who are now put into this escape room, and, one by one they figure it out and solve it. I think that actually could work really well. The more I think about it, the more I kind of like it turning into a challenge as opposed to an elimination. So any competitors in Season 5, if you're listening, practice your game knowledge in your escape rooms. Hoodie comes back into the game. Dino is eliminated. We have 2 rookies winning eliminations in a row. West Ham last week. Now we have Hoodie winning, but we say goodbye to Dino, and we have 2 PKers out. Skill Specs and Dino now both out of the game. Unfortunate for the PKers, but again, that's just kind of how the season was going. They were just targeting the PKers, and we are now down to, 15 players? Yeah, 15 players, exactly. So another episode done. I think the money-making challenge turned out great. I was really happy with it. Had some amazing moments. Again, anytime an episode has a memeable moment or an iconic moment or an exciting moment, I think it turned out great. And I think this episode had a ton of them, and especially with the Faux throwing, the settled doing really well. We had a really exciting elimination. So this, to me, was probably one of the better episodes of the season. I really liked it. And I think it turned out great. So we have, like I said, 15 players left, and next week is an absolute banger episode. We have episode 4, like I like to call it the Red Wedding episode, which I'm very, very excited for. But yeah, as you guys all know, I love hearing your feedback. So please leave your comments on episode 3, so today's episode, in the comment section below. Also, make sure you guys join my Discord, where we have a Gielinor Games feedback channel in there too. You can always send me some messages in there. Send me a DM if you want as well. I love going over your feedback. And like I said, it's already helping to shape Season 5. For those looking for information on Season 5, we have officially finalized the format for the season. I've been talking for the past 2 weeks with a group of people who have helped with feedback on the format, and we have come to an agreement on what we all think is a really exciting format. So the format is now complete. It takes a while to come up with things that I think are worth putting into a season, and the format is the biggest one of all potentially, right? And that is now done. So now comes the process of finding players who want to play, and then filming, right? As you guys all know, filming takes up to 5 to 6 months. It could be lower based on how many sessions we're able to get in per week. My hope is that we can film a season within 4 months, 3 to 4 months, but usually what ends up happening is it's like 5 to 6. So yeah, my goal is to have Season 5 out by the end of the year, so maybe another October, November, December release dates. That's my goal. Again, could be earlier if things go smoothly, could be potentially a little bit later if they don't go as smoothly, but I'm doing my best to get a Gielinor Games out in 2025. I'll make sure to keep you guys updated on the progress on Season 5 as these GG Season 4 reviews keep coming out. Next one hopefully will be in the next 2-3 weeks or so, maybe sooner, maybe later. You never know. It's always a surprise on this channel, but yeah, that's a wrap on Season 4, Episode 3 Soup review on GG on Gielinor Games. I'm having trouble ending this video. Also, the RuneScape Golden Gnome nominations just went live, and hey, look, there's a brand new category this year, Best Series. So if you guys enjoyed Gielinor Games Season 4 and want to nominate it for Best Series, I think that's the best place to do it. Shout out to everybody that gives it a nomination. I really appreciate it. I'll leave a link to the nomination form below. If you would like to see these episodes before anyone else, make sure to subscribe to my Patreon. For just a couple of bucks a month, you can support my content, get access to a bunch of behind-the-scenes Gielinor Games footage, and you get to hear me read your name out loud in these videos. To my Dragon Tier legends, Alderon, Alec, Caroline, Flamo, Jason, Joel 1330, Josh, Katie, Kitten Robber, Lacey, Mookow, Mr. Monotone, Nico, Rayman, MP, and the Owl 909. To my Rune Tier kings and queens like Best Ponage, Francine, Lady Snicks, and the Tempest 52. My Adamant Tier lovers like Cymbeline, Freedom Tiger, Melon Slapper, and Xavier. I'll see all of you in the next upload, which will hopefully be very, very soon.